What will the developer and tech job market look like for the rest of 2022 and beyond? That's what we're talking about on this episode of Dynamic Developer. I'm your host, Bill Detwiler, and I'm joined by Chris Thorpe, CTO and SVP of Solutions for Path. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here. I'm enjoying it.
So listeners to this show may be familiar with Path from my interview with Kip Wright, your CEO, last year. But for those who aren't necessarily familiar with Path, give us a little rundown on just exactly what you do.
Great. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I know Kip was here last year. So I actually just joined Path about 5 months ago. I sort of joined from the other side of the industry where I've been hiring people for years. So I've been brought on board to help flesh out what really is something called a hire, train, deploy model. So it's a standard vernacular used in the industry. But ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to find people who sort of fall through the traditional cracks on the hiring side. We try and find the diamonds in the rough and create opportunities for them, build a custom curricula around that. And what I've done coming in from sort of the financial services industry is we've focused on building the curricula, which I think are the most in-demand jobs, the most in-demand skills. And then we have some relationships with some pretty cool companies out there, and we sort of place them into these companies, and we create pathways and opportunities to go into those companies. So I think it's the reason why I loved doing this job is I've seen this disconnect between the big companies, and there's lots of great talent out there. So Path's job right here is to create opportunities, maybe go after people who have sort of more diverse backgrounds, people who haven't gone through the normal educational systems, and place them in these great opportunities in junior roles. So it's a fun place to be.
Yeah, let's drill down on that part of it a little bit, because I know your background, like you said, is in financial services. You've done stints at DLL and Bank of America Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan Chase. And what was it about Path that really attracted you to make a career shift like that from financial services over to talent development? You kind of touched on it there as someone who hires, tech professionals for decades. But what was it about Path specifically that just caught your attention?
That's a good question. Actually, I think I'm going to have to bore you a little with some of my history for you to understand why I joined a company like Path, because it's sort of been in the making for many years. So I'm originally from the UK. I actually have a master's degree in a non-computer science background. So I sort of started off with an engineering degree. So that's what you guys call a STEM education in this country. And I got hired into JP Morgan, and I actually got shipped to the US. And then I noticed what was going on with a lot of the big financial services banks is that they were hiring lots of people who came from non-traditional technical backgrounds. And a lot of us were pretty successful. I was lucky enough to get to some CIO roles, some MD roles at both Bank of America and JP Morgan. And during my career for both these places, we've sucked in lots of talent, but I just noticed there was so much inefficiency about how the big banks or the big financial services were recruiting people. We're leaving so many people out there in the marketplace. And a lot of my high points in my career, I built out the first tech center in Houston, Texas, where we hired 500 people. I've done the workforce strategy for Bank of America, where I restructured workforces around the world. I restructured the workforce strategy for DLL. And the common theme I've noticed, I've always been attracted to this idea around how you have a hiring manager, they have a resume, they have their perfect match of people they want for their skills. And then I see all these recruiters over here. And typically you go through this process of wasting like 90 good people that probably have the right skills, but they just don't happen to have the right thing on their resume. And then they find the right pattern match, as I call it, and they typically get a job. And the reason I joined Path is I just think there's another way that we can actually find opportunities for people where I see inefficiencies on both the hiring side and on the training side from the educational system. I've just seen that out trade been going on for years. So I want to do something about it. That's why I joined Path.
Well, I think that's a really amazing story. And as someone who also has a non-tech background, and actually a non-journalism background, although I've been doing this for 20 years, but had a career in tech before I joined TechRepublic. I started out my career like you as an engineering, mathematics, and computer science major. That was my major, and then I ended up with a couple different degrees in criminal justice, oddly enough. And then I had a career in IT, and then I had a career in tech media. So I think a lot of people that I talk to can identify with that kind of non-traditional path into the tech world. And so, I'd love to drill down on what that last point you made, which is about using, bridging that gap. And one of your roles, and it sounds like you kind of have a little bit of a dual role there at Talent Path, which is the traditional CTO, CXO, CIO role, which is using technology to achieve the company's goals. But then at the same time, you also have a little bit of a content role there, a product development role there with your, because you're developing the curriculum for Talent Path that they're going to use in these training programs. So, talk a little bit about that, because how you're balancing those two and how you're using that technology to enable the other part of it, right? So you're building a platform and a process at Talent Path that allows you to do that. Because, like you said, you're trying to not only identify people that would succeed within a tech career, you're also then trying to give those people the skills they need, and you're trying to connect them with an employer and help the employer have the right mindset and understand why these people will be valuable members of the team long term and have the right skills that they need. So, doing any one of those things would be a challenge, and you're trying to do all three. So, talk a little bit about how you're enabling kind of technology there at Talent Path to do that.
Oh, that's a tough one. There's a lot going on that we're doing with Talent Path. I think the first thing we have to realize is the Talent Path has a different mission. We're in the historic times right now with COVID, with the fact that we're going through this accelerated digital transformation. There's this massive demand out there. There's hundreds of thousands of job openings in the technology space. And then, we still have lots of people in the marketplace trying to figure this out. So you've got all these companies in the marketplace that have their missions where they're trying to generate revenue, they're trying to do all these other things. Talent Path's mission is we're trying to bridge that gap. So everything that we do in the company, we're building systems, we're building processes, which I get into right now, is just trying to find the diamonds in the rough, flow them through our process, understand what's going in the marketplace, and place people into junior programs within these companies. So our mission is different. Our mission is really trying to bridge that gap, whereas most of the other companies out there, they're trying to build a product or they're trying to do something in the marketplace. So they're not really focused on the process of hiring. So I think our secret sauces boil down to, so we're linked with a staffing company. So we have a lot of natural processes, and we have a lot of natural flow of candidates just flowing through Talent Path the whole time. So one thing we've built is we just have a lot of data. So we have a lot of data about candidates applying for jobs. So what I've implemented in the last 6 months is we've just started to track this flow, and we're actually tracking it across 3 dimensions. We're tracking across the dimension of emotional intelligence. We've created some of our own proprietary tests that don't presuppose you have a computer science background. And then we're tracking that data, and then we're then measuring the outcomes of what happens with that data. So we have the advantage of the fact that we just have lots of, we have hundreds of people that flow through the thing, and we want them to be successful. So we've got an AI practice inside of Talent Path. So we're actually using some data analytics to actually just track that data and just create a closed loop around how that's processing. So we actually have a set of algorithms and data that we're using to screen for candidates a different way. Another thing that we have is that we invest a lot of time and money and energy with various networks. So we have the digital outreach to university networks. So we're spending a lot of time and money just creating some different networks. We have some partnerships with some people on that side. And we're not going necessarily after the top tier schools. We're going after one level down schools where we think we have a more of a diverse outreach. So we have an algorithm which we're continuously training. We have a network of intake on this side. We have some of what I'm going to call the old-fashioned heuristics of using a staffing company. So we have great flow. And then we sort of bringing to bear some of the best practices from the industry around training. And this wasn't one of your questions, but one thing I've done as a CTO is I know what a buyer wants. And we have huge demand in the cloud space. We have huge demand in the data space. And then I think when you're bringing people from non-traditional technical backgrounds, there's a huge demand in the low code space. So we've sharpened our curricula and our brand and our training, our expertise and projects around making sure we can produce people, full stack people in the cloud space, in the data and analytics space. And we were exploring some ideas in the low code. So we've actually got a curriculum which we put online, and we're doing that. And then that's that component. And then the biggest piece of work right now that I'm focused on is really trying to come up with a digital brand, so we can do the outreach to some of our clients, so people can see some of the work that the cohorts and the students are doing. So they're the three components of what we're working on right now for Talent Path from a technology perspective. And then I have all the traditional stuff. We have some CRM tools and all the usual stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that blending of technology and AI and ML with the process, the old school kind of process that you had with the staffing company. So you've got the throughput and those personal relationships that you're building with those universities. Because, you know, one of the things that I've always seen, and I think anyone who has gone through the job market recently and a job search recently is exactly what they've faced a situation exactly as you described it, which is a lot of the algorithms are just looking for keywords on resumes, and those keywords, you know, can be some indicators of skills that people have, but they don't necessarily tell you the whole picture. So I like that. I like a more holistic approach that Talent Path is taking there.
And actually, that reminds me. So that's why I wanted to talk about the mission. Is so what we're trying to do is we're trying to grab as much data as possible at the front end, so that we're screening people in. The problem with these ATS systems and these resume screens is that they're really just looking for that perfect keyword search. And that tends to screen people out. So because of our mission, we're trying to find ways to bring people into the fold and give them an opportunity, whereas most of the hiring companies out there are like, well, if you don't hit this criteria, you're gone.
Well, and I think too, you get a snapshot. So in a previous life, I was also a data analyst. And I did a lot of quantitative analysis for social science research firms. And so one of the things we found is we were always trying to find, we got better results with longitudinal data. And so that's really kind of what you're talking about, in that you aren't just looking at a snapshot in time where you say, hey, look, we've got 100 resumes that came in for these positions and they fit these keywords, and boom, now we've already processed this person through, they have the job. That's great. But we have no visibility into how have they been successful later on? What happened afterwards? What actually makes them, you know, so you can tie it back over a certain length of time to say, yes, this person was successful, right? And that is, you know, that's something I think has been missing. So I'm glad to hear, you know, you're kind of acknowledging that and solving for that. And so let's talk about those, you know, those skills, those indicators that you're looking for. What do you think are those? You already kind of talked about some of them. You talked about cloud and full stack cloud development. You talked about no code and low code, which I've seen, you know, explode, and it seems to be taking the same path that office productivity apps kind of took about 20 years ago, right? With everybody suddenly became an accountant because they could use, or a database admin because they could use Excel, right? So talk to me about what are those most in-demand skills you see that employers are looking for right now?
So this all stems from digital transformation, and the three pillars around digital transformation is people are hungry for data, and so that's just an exploding skill. So we've actually got a few instructors there, and the demand on that side spans. And the other thing to remember as well is, because we're trying to take people with a junior background, so the other thing we've got to think about is we've got to make them successful in a junior role in the company with a set of training. So within the data space, for example, we're finding we're very successful if we can bring people at the data analyst level, where they've got natural communication skills, they've got natural problem solving skills, et cetera, et cetera. We're staying away from some of the more esoteric skills around data scientists and people like that. But with some of these ML libraries that are coming out, it's interesting how we're finding that market's continuing to expand. So we've got that whole data space. There's always demand for people with traditional programming backgrounds, but because of the cloud and everybody's moving into the cloud, finding people with that magical combination of programming skills that work in either AWS or Azure, to a lesser extent Google, people who have those cloud-based skills is huge. And then, yeah, definitely on the low code side, Salesforce is exploding. We're looking at some automation things as well. So as a buyer on the CTO side, when I want to bring people into my workforce, I want certainty of outcome. I want to make sure if I'm bringing these junior resources in, I want to see potential and niche skill sets to help continue to train my workforce as well. So they're the three pillars that we're really focused on, and just going to brand and making sure that when people get our data engineers or our data analysts from Talent Path, they are going to be productive day one or at least within a week. And so I think we're giving them a little edge on that side. So the curriculum's pretty tough. It's like 12 weeks, 15 weeks, and it's a pretty intense practice, but I think it's a great experience. And the other flavor that we're adding with our training is that we give them lots of practical hands-on experience. We've got the emotional intelligence training, and we try and get projects from the business so that by the time they get exposed to the final company that they're working at, they can maybe understand how to manage a portfolio. They can understand how to work in the work environment, because some of these kids that come from some of these environments, they've never been in the corporate environment. So we've got an interesting blend as well around that.
And it sounds like, to me, that sounds much more like an apprenticeship kind of model, which I think is fantastic, because I think that's something in the US especially we've really lacked, where other places in the world, in Europe, and you found that model because it had history behind it, hundreds of years of history, and that carried through to the day. So I mean, it sounds like that's kind of what you're describing. It is much more about, hey, we're going to help make sure that as an employer, you're getting the right talent. These people come in, already have a level of knowledge, and at the same time, the people coming in already know what to expect, and they, feel like they have confidence in being able to do the job, which is just, I think has been missing for a long period of time, unless you just kind of hit the jackpot on both sides of the equation.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, we're incented that, not trying to knock other models. And it's an interesting educational system in the US, but because we want to do repeat business with these customers and we're putting junior people in there, we have a mentorship program. So the way we set up the training is we're incented to make sure that when we put people into these companies, they're as productive as possible. Whereas a boot camp, it's more about the upfront fee. And then really it's then up to you to take that training and figure out how to get a job. For us, we've made an investment. We're paying a salary. So the more we can actually get people successfully placed in these companies, the model kind of works. So we're kind of incented to try and make sure that we give them as much skills as possible to be successful. So yeah, it's kind of like an apprenticeship.
Well, Chris, I think that's a fantastic place to kind of end our conversation. If folks do want to kind of learn more about the Talent Path, it's just talentpath.com, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep. And they can always hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter. I've got some handles around that as well. I'm happy to give people career advice. I've been doing this for 25 years, trying to figure out how to bridge that gap between these big employers. And there's a ton of great talent out there. And I get the biggest kick out of people that come in from these random backgrounds and are successful. So this has been fun. I've enjoyed this, Bill.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our viewers and listeners for joining us. You can listen to more episodes of Dynamic Developer on your favorite podcast platform, or watch a video of each episode, as well as read a transcript at TechRepublic.